this out. Hey, Raj, how you doing? How are you today, Ted?
I am scrambling. I added over 1,000 new factors to Cora, new reports, new APIs. It's just off the hook crazy. And this morning I wrote 10 new test specifications. So tomorrow I have to deploy 100 new test websites. So it's busy. How about you?
Wow. Well, the hardest part of my day was I woke up on the floor because we're getting a new bed. And so the old beds with sleep number. So I don't know if you ever mess with one of those, but it's like putting a Lego together. And to move it, you have to take that Lego apart. And that's when we did it last night and we slept on the floor. The positive side is when I put the carpet in, I dropped the extra coin and got that inch thick super padding underneath. So it wasn't as horrible as it could have been.
Nice. That's the best upsell when you get a trade show booth.
Get that padding, yeah, so you don't hurt your feet standing there. That makes sense. 1,000 new factors in Cora. So what are you up to now? You busted 1,000 by now, right? So
oh yeah, I'm at like 2,070, something like that.
That's significant. You went from like 950, 960 to 2,070 in a week.
yeah. Had some architecture breakthroughs that now if I can get things like the Google API to not suck in software, I can blow out amazing amounts of factors.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, things that are coming in it, there's all the entity stuff, there's question analysis, there's technology stacks. And what I've seen so far from the technology stacks is Google isn't favoring anything to win per se, but there are definite technologies that appear to impact how well you rank. And it might not be that Google is targeting those, it's just that those technologies and the way they're being used may be problematic for SEO. And so it's interesting to see those things. So a lot of the ones I'm starting to see commonly as negative factors are things like .NET applications and JavaScript frameworks and stuff like that.
You think that'd be so? Right now, you're seeing the correlation using Cora. How would you go actually do a test and prove or disprove that it is actually hurting?
Well, prove or disprove if it's very common that websites have trouble ranking, using a specific piece of a technology stack. I mean, that's something worth looking into if your website has trouble ranking and you use that piece of the technology stack.
Right.
So, it's not a matter of, scientifically prove it to be the case, because not all implementations of a technology are the same. A bad developer using a JavaScript framework could cause harm, where a good developer would avoid that. But if it's easy to make mistakes and cause harm, then that technology might be a risky one for SEO, and you'd want to investigate its usage.
That makes sense. So on a scale, though, if I was looking at everything else and I've done everything else I could and nothing else is working, that's when you would recommend looking at a technology stack, or would you go first?
Well, if I was doing an audit and I looked at the keyword and the report is saying, hey, require.js appears to be dinging these websites, and I look at the website and I see it's using require.js, I might be tempted to go do some page speed testing, see what it's doing to the render time. I might look at alternatives. Could you rework the page so that that library isn't needed? So I'd be tempted to at least look at it to see if there's something stupid going on versus, no, that kind of looks normal.
Right. That makes sense. Just to be on the safe side, I guess. Cool.
Yeah. What's also cool is entities and sentences out of the starting gate, a new heavy hitter factor. It's like the number 7 in overall factor strength at the moment. Something's going on.
Well, I'm not one to say I told you so, but
yeah.
For the record, I am the first one to ask you to implement that in the core.
What's weird, what I'm having a hard time understanding is that entities and H1 tags is not a heavy hitter. What I'm seeing, about a quarter of the way down the factor list is entities and H3 tags looks like the thing. And when I go and look at Yelp, it's like they're putting all their entities in H3 tags. So, it's just
so you think
a
Yelp
lot of
could
weird
be
things
skewing that up a little bit?
What's that?
Do you think Yelp could be skewing that up a little bit, or do they know something that everyone else doesn't?
Well, there's a lot of unknowns because maybe just Yelp's data is skewing that up, or maybe Google's AI is learning and it happens to learn a whole lot from Yelp. Or maybe there's an exploit out there and Google just no longer trusts entities and H1 tags as much as they used to. We just don't know the mind of Google, but what we're seeing are these outcomes. We just don't know the rationale on why those outcomes are happening.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited
says,
because
what
all
do
these
you
new...
mean by entities? Entities are detectable kind of topics. And so there's, Wikipedia, Wikidata, Freebase, a whole bunch of these topic-based databases will have IDs for entities. So they have an ID for a plumber, they have an ID for politics, they have an ID for pizza. They call these things, the IDs they give them are called machine readable IDs. And Google is able to create relationships between URLs and these topics based on those topics being detectable and having these machine readable IDs. And what people are finding is that they can get pages to rank for terms they haven't been able to break into by playing with these entities in different ways, playing with them in search, playing with them in content, playing with them in referring backlinks.
Schema.
But not all words are entities. It's only the ones that have entries in these systems that we've seen Google having an ability to detect and recognize. And so it's the Wild West. Nothing's proven, but there's a lot of smoke.
Yep.
And where there's smoke, there's usually something urgent.
Yeah, it's, from my perspective, Rush, the way it looks is persons, place, things, events. Those are entities. That's what the tools are using as entities right now. You can kind of figure those categories out when looking at Google NLP or TextRaiser. And then you look at the piece of content that you have, look at all the comparison content that's ranking now, and find the entities that are common. And the theory behind it is that those entities are in all of these pieces of content. So Google is associating that search term, or we can surmise or guess that Google is associating that search term with those entities. And then if thus by adding that into your content, you are more likely to rank for it. Yeah, and that's the basic thing. And then now having it in Quora, we can see, one, is it true? And two, where do we put it? Because of the way Ted broke it down and did the sections and stuff. Where do we put it for the most effectiveness? And it also opens, he added 1,000, 1,500 factors. So there's a 1,500 more things you can test and learn about in how to apply stuff. So I think it's awesome.
And if you want to know why we're so excited about this, is that it potentially explains a long-standing mystery of why do these listing-based directories, Avo and Yelp and, all those listing-based directories, why do they get such an easy time ranking?
Yep.
And obviously, page rank and backlinks and the overall size of the site matter, but even with that, they seem to have an easier than normal time ranking. And when you go and look at those pages that are ranking, look at all the entities, the persons, places, names, phone numbers, brands, all those entities. Look at where they're using them on the page. Look at the zones of the page that Yelp is using those entities. Look at how many entities they're using on the page, and think for a moment. Like we've established in testing that it's not the match count of your keywords on page that pumps up relevance, it's the keyword density. Test after test after test keeps showing the keyword density is the thing. Now think about your entity density, and that compared to what Yelp's entity density is. And that's why we're so excited. That's why we're lighting a fire. We're hoping to learn.
Definitely. And yeah, like Ted's got some cool stuff going. I know a couple other guys that got some cool stuff going. Lee over at Internet Marketing Gold, he's doing some cool stuff with entities. So hopefully we'll be able to figure a lot of this stuff out. Not sure that we'll give it all away, but I'm sure at some point in time you'll be able to have access to it and what we know. In the meantime, if you're using Quora, get ready for 5.5. My recommendation would be to run some reports this week before Ted releases it. That way you can bounce it off the 5.5 reports and see if you can see some changes, and then be ready to look at and test entities and see if it matters in your search queries. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited. So what is some of the technology sets we're going to need? TextRaiser, you said you had that set up so we can use the API for free, and then there's a couple new ones that you added.
Yeah. The Wayback API is free, which is absolutely awesome. The problem with the Wayback API is that it appears that its data only goes back 14 years. So websites are older, can be older than 14 years. So the problem is any sufficiently old website will cap out. And so there's a lot of ties on age, and it just basically means website older than 14 years. But anything newer than 14 years, we see how many days old and we can correlate the age. Now, I suspect that it's not going to be a factor, but it keeps coming back over and over and over again everywhere we go. But if you just think about it, Google can't make it website age that strong of a factor. Otherwise, the search results would just have a bunch of old outdated crap up at the top. All the 14-year-old news should be up at the top.
Right.
And that's not what we see. But we'll have data. You can prove me wrong.
It'll be cool. I've seen some tests that age, domain age, and whether it's a factor or not. And it seems some proving it and disproving it. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool to actually get closer to the number one answer. I don't think we'll get the number one answer, but closer to would be awesome.
Yeah. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm actually building this feature so that all the people who disagree with me can prove me wrong with my own tool.
Nice.
So, have that.
All righty. Let's see. Every time. All right. Episode 144 SEO this week. Today we're going to look at content, podcasts, and infographics. That's the snazzy title that I came up with. All two of those are link building methods, and one is actually creating content. It's a presentation that I thought you would enjoy. There's a template inside of the presentation. He doesn't give you the template, but you can, copy it. And I recommend that you do. Hold on. Give me a second. Madness. All right. Anyway, so what I was saying. So I recommend that you take the presentation, flip through it. It's a slide set, and then make a copy of the template for yourself. And I'll tell you why when we get to that. This is going to be really good. Hopefully the dogs won't bark. New bed delivery guy is supposed to be here, so that's why I actually walked away that time. Anyway, so let's see. First one is on learn.g2.com is how to use the Google Natural Languaging API to level up your SEO. I wanted to share this. This isn't a new concept. There's plenty of posts out there about it. I've shared content about the API before, but I wanted you to go through a post. I think I'll write one too on my new website once I launch that, of how to look at the natural language API, what we're looking at, what we're taking, and what we see as important or not. Obviously, you'll have to use your own testing and general knowledge of the concepts to implement it a little bit better, but that's how we're doing it to some degree of success. And I'll also cover one with TextRaiser. I want to reach out to the TextRaiser guys and actually get them on a podcast, hopefully sooner rather than later, just so that we can get their perspective on that. And then maybe even the ClearScope guy, because he's really talkable and reachable. So, but ClearScope is $300 a month, regardless of usage. And then TextRaiser is the free API. And then they have some levels if you go full bore. So, but this post will walk you through some of the ideas of what NLP is and how to use it for SEO. Nice, fancy click-through buttons. Don't bother with them. I've actually clicked through them, and there's nothing on the other end but a list of junk. So, but the rest of this stuff kind of explains in general terms what it is, uh, where to get to it, how to play with it, how to read it, how to decipher the different categories, which you're going to need, especially if you're using Cora here in the very near future. You want to know the difference between entity, sentiment, salience, and categories. And then you also want to know some of the other stuff that and syntax here. Josh Brzezinski talks about syntax a lot, or at least he used to before he killed the show. But he was talking about syntax a lot, and then categories. But there's also a feature inside of the API that I asked Ted to pull into Cora, the new reports, and he did, and that's pulling in the Wikipedia links. And I want you to think about all that, because when I talk about, or when whatranks.com releases the schema course, I'm going to show you how to use those Wikipedia links and build schema to annotate the entities inside of your content to get more credit for those. So I think that's going to be really cool. Search Engine Journal. This is a post on how to use the link title attribute correctly. If you're using match counts and stuff and you're kind of raising those up and you need to add them to the HTML, link title is actually a really cool way to do it. Another use of this is to say what that link is about. And I'm going to skip through all the blah, blah, blah. We're just going to go to the code section. Let me find it. The image loading here is kind of horrible. Right here. So what we're talking about is adding a title. And if you're doing accessibility stuff, this is actually really good to kind of keep you in line and keep you from the the lawyer hawks that are running around suing people just for the easy buck because you're not accessible.
Yeah.
Plus, this is a go ahead.
I was going to say, if you don't know, the title attribute is named by engineers, not for normal human beings. What it should actually be called is tooltip, because when you hover the link, it's the text that appears in the tooltip.
In the tooltip, all right.
But just note, it's called title. It's not the title of the page. It's the tooltip of the link.
and the readers will actually read that out. So if they're going over, visually impaired persons hovers over it, it'll read out. In this case, this is a link to Search Engine Journal website, which is perfect. It's awesome. You're catering to your readers who are your site visitors that are using that. I think that it's a great added feature. I want to look at some ways to implement that inside of WordPress, but I think that it would be just something. I don't see why that would be hard for people to do. This is a link to Search Engine Journal. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great place to add matches. So if you have a core report and you're like maxed out and you're just running out of ideas and it says you need 30 more matches inside of your HTML, there you go. Go to your internal links in your content and start adding some titles in there. So I think it's a good opportunity there. I don't know, Ted. Have you used that? Like, I haven't really thought about using the title. I've seen
I,
it when I'm applying backlinks, but I'm like, what do I need that for, kind of thing.
I
And this kind of reflects
I use it all the time.
in.
If Cora tells you something stupid, like, hey, all of your competitors are skyscraper content and you need to add 3,000 more words of content, and I'm like, well, that's going to make my page look like crap and it's not going to convert, and the CRO guys are often right on that. Well, go find a footer link, give it a tooltip with 3,000 words of explanation that's keyword rich.
Oh,
Problem solved.
nice. Well, there you go, straight from Ted. All right, let's see. W3 Total Cache. I don't know if they sold this or they rebranded their business, the plugin. I'm going to assume that they sold it because I don't believe Jesse owns the original guy that was promoting W3 Total Cache. I will say, as a provider of page speed optimization services, this is hands down the hardest tool to use to implement caching, minification, etc. And most users have a big issue with it. Hold on a second.
So, dead air again. Anybody have anything they want me to shout out? Who has a service they want promoted? Come on, somebody's got to be selling something. It's Cyber Tuesday, for heaven's sake. Let's see. So what else is Cora going to do in the next update? It's going to, if you have the API, it'll give you technology stacks. And so you'll be able to see the technologies that the top 100 websites are using. And if you don't use the API, because it's kind of a little bit pricey of an API, the important information from that will eventually percolate out through the Cora shared data, and you'll be able to see which technologies are broadly beneficial, even without using the APIs. So there's some pretty cool stuff right there. And with the TextRaiser API, their free program, right now, Cora is using 3 API units to generate a report with entity data. Their free tier gives you 500 units per day. So you basically can do, 160 or more Cora reports per day using the free tier, which is awesome. When is the next big Cora update coming? Probably next week, but it could be sooner. Depends on how testing goes. So we're really close. Like, there's like 4 things on the list for code complete, then then just testing and deploying new installers. So it's a very short list, probably under a week. Hey Ted, could you talk a little about entity density? Well, it's a new concept we just invented out of thin air because of what we saw on Yelp. And we're trying to explain why Yelp has such an easy time. And we know that keyword density is a thing in the system. So if keyword density is pertinent to relevance, then entity density ought to be pertinent to relevance relationships. And so somebody's asking me, how big is my team? You're looking at them. I'm a crazy kind of coder, so I can knock out 10,000 lines of code a day. That's not a problem. Going back to entity density, we're just looking at it in the same light as keyword density, but instead of looking at keyword matches and variation matches, we're looking at entities versus the overall word count. What in Cora is the most overlooked? Probably the roadmap. Like, people jump into all of the technical data elsewhere in the reports. And that's usually for, advanced stuff when all else has failed. You should really be spending 90% of your time or more in the roadmap. So for that reason, I'd say the roadmap is probably the most overlooked. Knock out those easy deficits. It's the best thing you can do with your time initially. And Clint is back.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything. Yeah, the pool guy's here at the same time as the bed guy, so that's what all the barking was about. The dogs were like, stranger danger. So
unfortunately, I gotta hop off. I had something come up.
Okay.
So I'm going to abandon you here, but I want to thank everyone and remember them to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. And we'll see you tomorrow on Fight Club. I'm not sure what the topic is. I think we're just going to go over some more tests and talk about
stuff.
Yep. All right.
All right, Ted. Have a good day. Thanks for coming. All right, thanks for Ted for covering down for me. Yeah, just so you guys know, it's real life here going on. Pool guy, dogs don't like the pool guy, so I keep him in during the show, and he usually comes during the show, so I just think ahead and advance that. And then the bed deliveries happen to be today, and they're supposed to be here between 12 and 4. It's 11:30, and they showed up early, so can't help it. That's life. That's what happens. Anyway, so W3 total cache. What I was saying about that is it's actually a lot more technical than the other tools to set up your website. However, on most host servers, I can optimize a site faster using this than I can with other plugins. But it breaks things. So if you're using my service, more than likely you won't get W3 total cache because you can add any feature, or you can push the wrong button, or you can check a wrong check mark and you destroy your site, or you break your site and you won't know what to look for. So W3 total cache does get a little bit of a bash. The positive side is they're picking some stuff up. Finally adding lazy loading images, and they're adding some stats. This is if you're a pro member, I don't necessarily know if you need all those stats, but they added that into it as well. And it's pretty fancy, so I would check that out. And then they cleaned up the minifier, especially on HTML. And if you ever used this before and you broke a website, you did it using minification. It's just the way it is. It's always the way they handle that. If you don't want to use this and you're looking for alternatives, I would look at Breeze. That's my favorite right now. PageSpeed Ninja is coming in a close second. I don't like that it's not as optimizable. But PageSpeed Ninja is good, and let's see, auto optimize sometimes, but primarily for most of my stuff, we put WP Rocket on, especially if you're using what's that, WP engine, you need to use WP Rocket because they strip everything else off. It's just the way they work. This is linkassistant.com, a beginner's guide to keyword research. Check this one out. I like this because they actually start getting into keyword competition and organic and stuff. But I mainly highlighted this because I recommend Rank Tracker for their stuff, and there's some keyword research tools inside of it that people don't know about and people don't leverage much. So check this post out and just see how to leverage that tool just a little bit more. Some of the things that you have in there, you're paying for the subscription, so you might as well knock it out and get some more out of it. So this is pretty cool. In particular, look at the search intent. A lot of people miss that. They don't look at the search intent, and they'll optimize for high traffic stuff that just doesn't bring buyers. Where you look at the search intent, you can probably save yourself a whole lot of work because they're less traffic, so most SEOs ignore them, making it easier for you to rank. But those keywords actually convert more, so I would check that out. Marco recommended Swift Performance. I had that one as well. I played with that. We bought a few licenses to it. I can still beat it with W3 Total Cache. It's just when you're using those plugins that have this set, this is how we're going to do it. It's easier to beat something that allows you to customize. So yeah, it'd be pretty. But yeah, Swift Performance, that's another good one. I would put that there with WP Rocket at the same time. Let's see. This is Seth's or Steve Toth SEO notebook. We talked about this before. This is another post that he did on getting featured snippets. It's the last one. I put this one in here. I talked ad nauseum about this, but if you click on this, you can actually get to all the old ones, all his old posts, and he's got a whole series on getting featured snippets and some different tips and stuff. So I would check that out. It's really good. And then he's added the spreadsheet in this one to help you out a little bit more. If you guys don't notice, I'm pushing through so you can get, so in case we get any more descriptions. James Gregory, back when the white hat, when it was the black hat forum, Charles Float started that with Todd Foster, and I met James Gregory inside of there, and we became pretty close. I left that after Charles had all his drama, but and occasionally I still talk to James, and he puts out some great content. He did a presentation at Chiang Mai 2019, and this is actually that presentation busted out into a piece of content, which is really cool. It goes over how they used infographics for link building and increase the rankings of a site and some of the traffic. He goes exactly tip for tip for tip for tip, where to find the data, building it, promoting it, etc. So if you've ever thought about, and you're in a market that allows for data, and you ever thought about doing or taking advantage of getting infographics made, then this is definitely one for you. Plenty of people can make them. You just need to get the data, data needed. Obviously you can make it up, I guess, if you wanted to, but this is a really good opportunity and a great post on how to do that. Again, James is putting out an awesome piece of content right down to how to embed it, how to create the embed codes, the landing, the emails for outreach, and etc. It's all there for you. So definitely give James a shout out here and tell him that SEO This Week sent him right here in the comments. Content King, these guys have a Slack group, and I see occasionally they put out some decent stuff. This is the Robots text file and SEO. You can do a lot of harm to your website if you don't know what you're doing. So it's always good to just kind of familiarize yourself with this. For the most part, I don't see you messing with the Robots.txt very often, but there's some things in here. If you're doing it and you want to know what's what, then this is an excellent guide to teach you through that. I like the way the Content King guys write, and that they actually put some different directives and stuff and get some ideas and tips. You can write down the plane with multiple sitemaps, etc. So again, know how it works, so that if you accidentally break it, you know how to fix it, or at least very least keep keep this bookmarked so that you'll be able to accomplish that. All right, one more second. This is madness today. I apologize, guys. So anyway, Content King, Robots.txt. Let's see. Next is Search Engine Journal, link building guide, podcast. When I first started SEO this week, that was the intent. Create the podcast on YouTube, rip off the audio, put it on all the audio sites with linking, and that would build some backlinks for me. I'm repurposing the content over and over again, right? So I wanted to do that with SEO this week, and this is pretty much what this post talks about. And but it goes beyond that. Is again, I do the hosting part, but there's also the be the visitor part. You can actually reach out to people who are looking for guests, and be a guest on their podcasts, and then you can build links to those. And the theory is, if you're on their shows, more people will look and find you, thus and link to you, thus building the stuff. So it does work. It takes a lot of work though. Running a podcast, you see SEO this week. I do the show live because I used to do it recorded. It just bored me to tears, and there was no one to talk to. So I do the show live. And when you do the show live, things like dogs and people coming to the office and all that other madness, it all happens. But that's what kind of makes it fun and real for me, right? I don't know if you guys like it or not. I know most of the time Ted's able to cover down, or like today he's had to leave, so I can do most of it. But that's just, it just makes it real. It makes it challenge, and I like the interaction in the chat. So that's why I do it. I've had the opportunity to talk to other people on their podcasts. I'd like to do that more. I think that when I'm questioned or I'm engaging with someone, I put out more stuff, and I find that most people are that way. So if you are looking for a content marketing medium, you don't want to write all the time, and you don't necessarily want to make videos all the time, podcasting is probably the way to go for you. So I would try that out. And here's the post. I opened up talking about a content generation process, and and this is a slideshow. I'm going to skip, I think it's slide 80-ish. Let me find the template I was telling you about. There it is, right there. Let's see if I can make this bigger for you guys. All right. So my recommendation is, if you're using a tool like Page Optimizer Pro, Surf, or whatchamacallit, Cora. Build yourself a template for when you write out your content. In this case, you're going to take this out. This is literally almost exactly to a T what I do. He just got a little bit more crazier with it with all this stuff. But this is how you build your content. You tell your writers what you want your H1, H2, H3s, H4, what you want in there, what you want answered and stuff. So when you get it back, you're not playing games trying to organize and fix stuff. Again, this, if when Kyle or Ted or anyone else who says write an outline, give an outline based off of those tools, this is what they're talking about. I'm going to create one of these. I'll probably give it away on one of the sites, or at least give it to the people in SIA and IMG, so that everyone has it and is be able to do a little bit better. Like, it would have been cool if he gave this out, but obviously you don't want to give out everything. And then this was a presentation he did live, so. But at the end of the day, that's the takeaway. Slide 64 is the one you're looking for. There's some other information in here around slide 40-ish. See if I can find it. There's a site. There you go. Keyword gap. There's a link I wanted to show you on slide. There you go. Categorize the keywords by the buyer's journey. It's older post. It's by Dan, and that one is it gets deeper into looking at conversion and looking at buyer intent. Navigational versus informational versus buyer. So check that post out as well. Again, that's slide 53. So 2 really good pieces of information inside of there. And I think you'll enjoy. And we got through it. Holy hell. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Again, bed delivery guys, robot phone calls, the pool dude, the dogs. It's just madness here today, but that's my life, and that's why I love it so much. Hey, Ted, welcome back.
Sounds like I missed a lot.
Doorbell rang again, so.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, guys. Yeah. I had a customer fire, but I got them squared away, and now I'm back.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so looked at the rest of the stories pretty good and talked a little bit. Do you guys have any questions? I got 15 minutes. The big guys are still up there banging around, and they're not going to be ready for me yet. And Ted's back. So if you guys have any questions, I think that this is the time outside of what Ted talked about. What do you think about infographic link building? Have you tried that, Ted?
Oh, I think it behaves kind of like social media. If they're edgy enough and cool enough, then people want to share them.
Uh-huh.
But the trick isn't the putting information in a graphic. The trick is, how do you be cool about it?
Yeah.
And that's more of an art than a science. So if you're good at making things look cool, if you're good at presenting, facts and data and information and procedures in visual ways, then that's awesome. I happen to suck at art, so my infographics would probably not go very far.
I do horrible even when I have templates. So I, your limits, and know that there are the people that are better at it.
Yeah,
I will say that the ones that what I was used to do when I first started blogging is I go to Pinterest. And I look at all the infographics. I find the ones that are popular, and then I turn those into blog posts, and then I share them on Pinterest myself. And that brought all kinds of traffic from Pinterest. So you don't necessarily have to use them, create them yourself. There is a way to leverage infographics to build links without actually using your own. So.
Yeah, but what's cool about it, I really like the concept that somebody with art skills can make it work for SEO. They can turn art skills into an SEO advantage, where me with my technical chops, I can't have that advantage.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that's possible is really cool.
Yep, I appreciate it. Question from Andreas Frank. How many links can I put on my page at once using a doc stacking without something happening. Thank you for your opinion. I'm assuming you're talking doc stacking is when you're talking, if you're talking adding the embeds. If you're talking about, I created a Google Doc as an example, and how many links I put on it? Is there like this tipping point? I don't
Well,
know. Is it outbound links? Is that if having too many outbound links doesn't, in my opinion, if you do when I'm building them, I don't want to go to a site that has 180 unless
well,
there's a reason for it.
in my opinion, all links are outbound from the page they're on. And if you look at large online retailers, it's very common to have 500 links in the primary navigation.
Right.
So we're talking big numbers.
Yeah. Well, over the top SEO, if you ever reverse engineered some of their menus, you see that's pretty rough. I get a lot. Let's see. Okay, he's calling me. I'll be right back, Ted.
Okay. So what do you guys want to talk about? We got 12 minutes left here. You name the topic. Shout them out. Shout them if you got them. Anybody. Bueller? Otherwise, I'm going to pick the topic. So do you guys want to pick the topic or should I? What we have here is a failure of imagination. Okay, so the topic I am going to pick is 20. Oh, wait, here we go. Entity building. How to get one or increase it. Okay. Entity building is kind of like LSI. Don't overthink it. We're talking about these related words that you sprinkle throughout your content and your links and your backlink anchor text, and you target in search terms and autocomplete and put on your web 2.0s and to work into your knowledge graph. And so we're doing all of those types of things. But it's basically very similar to LSI. I'd call it LSI plus. So it's kind of more advanced because these are terms that Google is going, oh my God, these are actual topics, and all of these databases confirm it. That's what the machine readable entity IDs are. And so what you want to do is figure out what words are related entities for your keywords. And that's what Cora and other tools are going to do. Then you want to use those keywords in the zones of your page and your network of sites and related sites and PBNs. You want to use those things to build relationships that your page is related to those entities. And so basically all you're doing is treating them like special LSI keywords. So you don't need to overthink it. Just think of it as LSI plus. You need to figure out what entity keywords are important, and you just sprinkle them throughout your content and your strategy.
Yep. I've been applying that for quite some time, and how Ted just explained it right there is the same. Think of it as the concept, whether you believe in LSI or not, just think of it, that's the concept that you're using. You're just doing a different set of words.
Yeah, and it turns out, this isn't proven, but it's plausible. LSI might actually register to the people testing LSI accidentally because of the entities that are mixed in with the LSI terms. So we might have been saying LSI this whole time, but it might actually be entities that are the thing. And so we don't know, but that's one possible outcome, is that LSI might have worked simply because there's a random amount of entities in play.
Let's see. Did you get to Terry's question about Robots.txt?
No, what was that?
General information site. What is the perfect Robots.txt file? Is it wise to keep it wide open nowadays?
Well, General information site, if there's a login, you'd want to exclude the login. If there's,
Yeah.
stuff like that, you typically want to exclude them. For e-commerce, you really want to exclude some stuff. You want to exclude your faceted navigation, your, show me all the blue wool things. You want to exclude your add to cart buttons, because the last thing you want is Googlebot adding and removing things from your cart. That's an infinite loop. And
Yeah, I've seen that. That gets horrible.
So there are times to be very strict, but at all times you want to be very careful, because the number one way people ruin their rankings is messing up their exclusions.
Yeah. I would think on the e-commerce thing, I would do like Ted said, I would worry about excluding parameters and stuff so that you don't get that infinite loop. I've seen sites with search functions, and Google will go through and over and over and over and search and create. I know one developer, he created a site template so that whenever someone searched for X, Y, and Z, it would actually create the page for it. And Googlebot was doing that and just blew up the site. It was like killed the server because it was just creating sites over pages over and over and over again using that parameters thing. So that's one thing you would worry about.
If you're
For the most part, though, I don't know, Ted, but to me, it seems like for the most part, you'd really not delve too deep into it. It's kind of okay to leave stuff wide open. Like you said, for security reasons, you want to block, especially if you're using WordPress, the access, login access, and some of the other subdirectory stuff maybe inside of there. But for the most part, you think you're safe.
Yeah, if you're doing SEO audits for clients, one of the first things I always do in an SEO audit is I'll go and find out how big the website should be. I'll say, oh, they have 500 categories. They have 10,000 products in those categories. So they should have 10,500 pages roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go into Google and I'll look at what Google Search Console says is the number of index pages. And if it says there's 483,000, then we know there's an infinite loop. And then there's some easy tricks to figuring out where it's going infinite. There's in the legacy Google Search Console, you look at the HTML improvements and you look for duplicate titles and duplicate meta descriptions. And you'll see all these duplicates. And when you investigate the URLs, you'll be like, oh, it's just clicking the faceted navigation, or, oh, these are all pagination problems where they have the same title and meta description, or, oh, Google is crawling search somehow. And so when you look at it, you can get clues as to where it's running off the rails.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Google page speed factor question. Time to first byte question. I guess he's asking, is time to first byte the Google page speed? Is that what Google's looking at?
Stop thinking that way. Right. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think always of the website visitor who's standing in line at the bus stop in the morning, out in the cold, in the rain, who just got an email to go to your website, and he clicks the link in the email. What happens to that guy at the bus stop? And what's gonna get him, what's gonna kill him, is the asynchronous request. Time to first byte isn't gonna kill him. The fact that your web page is gonna spawn off 230 requests for images and 75 requests for JavaScript and CSS include files, and 32 different tracking pixels are going to load JavaScript-like things asynchronously. And all told, your waterfall diagram is going to look like it's 537 web requests. You just killed that guy at the bus stop. So it's not time to first byte that's killing you. It's those asynchronous requests, and you need to cut them back. That's the number one thing you need to do for page speed.
Yeah, I'd say time to first bite and start render are the two that Google is looking at. And I say that based off of just my experience, one, of optimizing over 1,000 websites, and two, agreeing completely with Ted, because page speed is that's user interface stuff. You know what I mean? So if I go to a website on my phone and it takes more than 3 seconds, and that is the magic number that Google is using, it's 3 seconds. Your site should be faster than 3 seconds to load up and to be usable. Start render time is usable. I can see it now. I'm using it, so that's why I use a start render time, especially in my services. Um, that's what I look for. I don't even look at full load because people put on so much crap. And then if you're using, let's say you have Google Maps, YouTube, and you have analytics added, and maybe you're using Hotjar to test your CRO, all that stuff adds up into your full load time. And I don't use it because it's not what the user sees. The user sees time to first byte. Okay, the site's responding, it's open, and start render. Oh, I can start interacting with it now. Am I in the right place?
Well,
So those are
it's
the two numbers that I use. And I think,
total
based off of
page.
my experience and doing it, is that's what how Google's looking at page speed.
Well, total page weight is also important. Like if there is literally 25 megabytes of download per page view.
Well, that'll affect that'll affect start render time too. If you're at a 25 megabyte web page, you probably have some things to consider.
Yeah, yeah. And typically what happens, this doesn't kill your rankings. You just drop out of searches on slow internet connections.
Yeah.
So you won't see your rankings change. You'll see your organic traffic go down.
Yeah. You'll
And when
start
you
getting
fix
desktop
those,
versus mobile.
yeah, and when you fix those problems, you generally don't see your rankings jump up. What you generally see is your organic traffic goes up. There might be a little bit of increase because people like your site more and you get better CTR, but it won't be dramatic ranking boosts or decreases. It'll be dramatic change in your organic traffic overall.
Right. And while I'm on this topic, my constant rat, get off of, if you're testing your website speed, get off of GT metrics, get off of page speed insights, get off of Pingdom, and use webpagespeed.org. That is the one that gives you the numbers. And then you can see the waterfalls. If you figure the waterfalls out and everything else, you're good. It gives you all those numbers broken down versus the singularity numbers that you get from Pingdom. Pingdom is what the user sees. GT metric is full load time. And that is not the speed you want to be optimizing for. You want to worry about the user stuff, which is webpagetesttools.org, webpagespeed.org. And that'll give you all of those numbers all together, and you can play with it and actually learn a little bit about what you're doing. What page speed insights, the worst freaking tool ever. And getting your clients hooked on it, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because they add a YouTube video, they add Google ads, they add tracking pixels, they add Facebook pixels. All that stuff counts against them, and Google loves penalizing site owners for using Google fonts, for example. All that stuff is penalized. It's all Google things, but in the testing tool, they're penalizing you for it and giving you a low grade. Now you got to answer your customer. So don't get them used to looking at it. Webpagetest.org. Freaking, I'm all flustered today. Can't even think of the site. You're gonna add one more thing, Ted?
I forgot.
Okay, me too. How important is it for you to have different hosts for PBNs? I have many. Do I really need them? You know,
If you get caught, it's potentially very important.
yeah,
If you don't get caught, it probably doesn't matter.
probably not. It doesn't matter. I would say, here's how I look at PBNs. I want them to make money to pay for themselves. So if I'm going to have it on a host, it's probably going to be a money site that's going to work well. For the most part, though, I just use pbn.hosting, and he sets it up on cloud hosting, and eventually I'm going to share some IPs and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not stressing all that. A lot of people stress that. If you are selling links on them and doing that kind of stuff, then there's a benefit for having it on different hosts. But if you're um, you have one host, you have 100 sites, and you have them divided up on 10 different IPs because an IP costs $1 on a good host like Liquid Web, I think you're going to be okay. Because that's 100 money websites. In my thinking, I'm creating a money website, and it just so happened to leverage my money website to do linking to clients or my own projects or whatever. That is normal course of business stuff. You're not hiding. You're not adding all the block robots to all your sites, saying here's a big old red flag. Don't find my crap. All of those things are what kicks it in. So,
And keep in mind that businesses like Wix will often have a million domains going through a single IP address.
yeah.
So, if they can do it, why can't you?
Exactly. Just don't, just you can do the way back rebuild kind of thing and stuff like that. That's sloppy. That's where you got to hide stuff and be a little bit more careful in what you're doing so you don't lose all your sites at once. But if you're making really good sites, then build off that way. And, they can be making money with AdSense. They can be PPL platforms for you. They can be links for you, etc. So I think there's much better ways to hide right in plain sight, and then going through and spending thousands of dollars on hosting and all that other madness. Let's see. Would you? This is from Olivia and Artie, one of them. Hopefully, both of them are watching. Would you sending links to picture files on your site increase the authority overall site? And notice some sites high ranking have 90% links to their graphics. What you're talking about is image link building, and typically those come from hot linking. I will say that there is an effective negative SEO or process out there where I will hot link, or I can hot link your images, and you'll see them as wallpaper sites, and that's the biggest network is those wallpaper sites. And you can actually negative SEO a site and tank them with those. However, they are very good links that way. So if you're building, let's say you have IFTT brand networks, or you're building some Web2 PBNs or normal PBNs, and you create some content to link to that, use the images and a hot link, and then have those images 301 to the attachment page that they're on. That's an excellent link building method. And you don't even have to worry about anchor text because there is no anchor text. It's a no text link. So again, they're cool. They work. Just be careful because you could accidentally negative SEO yourself depending on where you're putting them. Let's see. If I have 1,000-word article, would it be better to spread it over many pages and end a link, or put the article on one page and break it up by H1, H2, etc.?
The backlinko pages are 25,000 words, and they do great.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I think really it's how you format it, and is your reader going to want to get through all of that. So I have my on-page optimization. I got to update it, but that guide is 10, 15,000, and it's all on one page. So it's just really, if you're going to do 7,000, implement really good heading tags, and then implement a table of content so people can click through and find what they want. Plus, that gives you some other opportunities. You can actually link it to the table of contents URLs and an internal link inside of that page versus just linking to the page itself. Yeah, so that's how I would do it. Plus, I hate clicking, next page. As a user, that just gets annoying. And then I start thinking of all those sites that share images and one paragraph, and then you click the next one, and then the next one, just so they can show you 1,000 ads on their page. That's the image that conjures up to me. Not saying that you'll do that. It's just, to me as a user, that's how I think of that, and that I'm like, all right, I'm not interested in reading this now. Let's see. Rick made a good point. He's added a Google Ads on his and added a full second load time, which is the total load time. And then it dropped 2 points in the webmaster page speed just when AdSense are on the page as well. It's the same thing. It's the API pull, and Google is penalizing you for their own API. So if they're telling everyone make faster websites, and but we also want you to becoming a publisher for us to generate money, so that we can generate money. You'd think that if they actually cared too much about page speed, that they would fix all of those features, but they won't. So I don't worry about it, and that's why I don't worry about that score.
The two things I see that people add to their pages that destroy their speed benchmarks. One is the embedded YouTube video player. They don't realize that that JavaScript and that video player is actually doing connection speed testing. They are sending garbage traffic to see how fast your internet connection is. So if you use an optimized video player for your website, it'll perform so much better because it won't do that connection speed testing. The second one is those customer service chat solutions that everybody puts on every page. Those things typically load 25 megabytes of stuff that you don't need on every page view. What I used to recommend in e-commerce is you put an image link on every page for customer chat. And if somebody wants it, they will click it and it'll go to a special page for that that'll load that 25 megabytes of chat library. You don't need it on every view. You just need to let the customer know it's available if they want it and put it on one page, not all pages.
Yeah, I had that. That's a good point. I had that one of those on my website. Occasionally people used it, but it just wasn't worth a while to me. It slowed down the website, and then too, I had to have something open to monitor all the time. Boring. So that's a good point. And that looks like that's it. 12:09.
Cool.
All the crap that happened today, and we still got it done in an hour. That's why we're live, folks. That's why we're fancy and professionals over here.
Yeah, we're pros.
Fight Club, you mentioned before you took off earlier that you weren't entirely sure what we were doing. But
well, yeah.
Did you figure out what we're doing now?
Well, I'm thinking we're going to go over some more tests from the group.
Okay, perfect. I haven't been in there. They published more stuff?
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple new things, and there's some older tests we didn't cover before. Kyle just picked one or two for the Black Friday special, so there was more in there that we didn't go over.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll probably want to talk about how IMG is changing. So we got good things in the pipeline.
Oh, nice. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hearing what you guys got going on. And testing. You mentioned some new specifications. You have to send those my way so I can duplicate. I got to learn how to use that tool for crying out
loud. Well, yeah. Let me make sure I didn't do boneheaded mistakes in them, because I usually do, and I have to go back and rewrite and redeploy. Let me go through those iterations, then use them. It'll save you a lot of time and trouble.
Yeah. Good to learn the right way. I can break plenty of things myself. Thank you very much. All right, folks. Thank you very much. This has been episode 144. Interesting one indeed. We gave you all the whole real life stuff. People breaking into the house, beds moving, dogs barking. Ted left, I left. We all came back, and then we answered all your questions. So I think it was a good show. All in all, I appreciate your patience. And your thank you very much for coming again. If you could hit the thumbs up, subscribe, click the bell. Appreciate it. If you hated the dogs barking and all the interruptions, hit the thumbs down too. Engagement, baby. Bring it. I'll take it. Thank you very much. And we will see you tomorrow on SEO.
There's a question. Where's Clint's tool? Read multiple ways.
Yeah. That's open-ended right there. The two softwares, the developer, I'm moving hosts because SiteGround won't let me put Java onto my a cloud. So I'm moving back to Liquid Web. Liquid Web is doing all the importing and all that madness and installing Java. And then we'll be off to the races with the anchor text and the core software. They're both ready to go once the licensing set up. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's where they are. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow.